World of Warcraft has always struggled with peace between the Alliance and the Horde. Why? Well, it's a game, an expansion where everybody is happy, gets along well, and we work on the economy, infrastructure, and legislation. That wouldn't really be fun, would it? There needs to be a new threat every 2 years, and canonically, the timeline of Warcraft does reflect that. Well, Ian recently said this regarding Shadowlands' narrative focus and how time works within the Shadowlands. Here's the quote. "We will have to see how this difference in time will affect our characters when we come out the other end. Yes, we'll only know how much time has passed once we exit the Shadowlands at the end of the expansion." Now, speculating 2 or 3 years into the game's future is a fool's game, but with this time skip, we could be speculating 10 plus years into Azeroth's future. And the more we thought about this, to be real with you, the more it actually made complete sense to us. We are going into the Shadowlands, and we are not coming back until the expansion storyline is complete. Now, of course, you will be able to teleport back to Orgrimmar, but that is not canonical. That's just gameplay stuff for the game you're playing, not the state of the world and the story. When we're away in the Shadowlands, though, Azeroth will keep spinning. We are going to ballpark the time skip at 10 years. That's enough to give the latent tensions of Azeroth some time to develop while still retaining the majority, of course, of the characters that we know and love. Now, what's going to happen when we're away during this time skip that I really do think Ian has literally teased? And then more importantly, when we return, who's going to be there to meet us? What's going to go on? So today, we'll explore how Azeroth will develop and, of course, while the people of Azeroth may enjoy their decade of peace or whatever it is, that's not going to last long because it's World of Warcraft, and our return from the Shadowlands will obviously kick off a new era of Warcraft story. Likely, we think, an expansion the likes of which we have never seen before. Now, do you want to unlock content that you have never seen before because it's region locked? Well, use today's sponsor, NordVPN. You'll get 70% off at $3.49 a month with your first month for free. Link below. Now, why get a VPN? It's simple. Do you want to watch content from another region, right? Say a Netflix. Well, you could use Nord's 5,000 plus servers to choose your location and then use the internet as if you were actually there. They also keep you private. Your ISP, they're not going to know what sites you're using, so that means your ISP can't sell your browsing data to advertisers, nor can they prioritize some of the sites that you use over other ones. Nord also are a Panama-registered company, and that's important because it means that your government can't get to them to breach your privacy, and privacy is vital and important, it needs to be protected. The app and browser extension are super easy to use, and you, of course, will get 70% off and a free month at nordvpn.com/Bellular Gaming. So, thank you to them for supporting our content, and with that said, let's get going. Peace, prosperity, and good times all round. Under their new council, the Horde deepened their grasp on Kalimdor. Not through war, though, no, but through building. With productivity increasing amongst the Horde, the peoples are just doing better than ever. Then we've got the Night Elves. Still reeling from their collective trauma, they have begun constructing a new home in either Feralus or Hyjal. Yes, Tyrande still does want her vengeance, but she is stuck in the Shadowlands, separated from the rest of her people, who are de facto led by Chandris and are moving in a different direction. Over in the Eastern Kingdoms then, the Forsaken and the Living of Lordaeron have a tenuous accord, allowing progress to be made by both groups. A rebuilt Stratholme shows the region's newfound prosperity. A great Azerothian peace has appeared, something hardly experienced within living memory for the planet's people, and something that we have literally based on the Pax Romana, which is really the idea of an extended peace after a prolonged period of warfare, in this case from Roman history, and it seems like Azeroth is primed for that. What about the existential threats that have appeared every couple of years, though? Well, while we are lost in the Shadowlands, Azeroth has finally saw the results of our heroics. The Dark Titan was imprisoned, the Void Lord's plan was thwarted, and the light still feels like a distant threat. So it's really all pretty good. One of our writers, Jared, has spent the last month examining Lordaeron with extensive detail in the lore articles on our Patreon page. Now, to summarize, the area is a hotbed of political turmoil. You've got Kalia, Lillian, and Tandred essentially fighting for peace between the many factions, but bringing Gen to the same table as the Forsaken, that could be impossible, or at least very challenging. The Argents and the living of Lordaeron, they'll be keen to, claim their stakes on the soon-to-no-longer-be Plague Lands. Now, what about the Forsaken, who say prefer the Horde? Will they accept Kalia and Tandred, alliance figures, as mediators? And then where does Silvermoon fit into this? They have learned from the past, perhaps, that isolationism can bite them back pretty hard, and they're maybe the most outward-looking of the elves. I mean, back in Mists of Pandaria, they almost switched sides to the Horde. Lorthamar is clearly a shrewd leader who is keen not to repeat the mistakes of his forebears. So Lordaeron is somewhere where a lot could change. There is then, of course, the Night Elves. It looks like Tyrande will be in the Shadowlands with us, and that means that the fire in their grief will be gone, potentially transforming it into something, more constructive, more positive. Then we've got the Zandalari. They're in a strong position to, essentially, reunite the troll peoples. And this may mean that all trolls of all tribes will be in the Horde. And that is actually something that is reflected in Shadowlands' character customization updates. This would actually give them the ability to reconstitute the Trollish Empire that they have been going on about since, patch 1.7, but I'd say very much so in a more constructive and more peaceful manner. Really though, just moving past the Zandalari, this is a big question for all of the allied races. What will happen after they picked their side? I mean, I assume they'll be building new homes and forging destinies for themselves. You've got groups like the Lightforged and the Void Elves, who I think will be key to the narrative, but are naturally few and far between in number. However, you've got the likes of the High Mountain, the Maghar, and the Nightborn, who are all larger factions. They'll clearly all be rebuilding and charting a new path forward, a way for them to move past the wars that we drafted them into. So we will return to find these factions in a pretty new state. But I'm especially interested in the Maghar. As for why, listen on, because this piece is not going to last, and later in this video, we're going to explain how we think the peace will break. So yes, we'll return to find our faction strong after years of peace and development. And ultimately, the power behind this type of narrative is that it gives us, the players, something to care about, something to rally behind. We have spent so long, seeing the factions just fall to pieces. To return and to see them strong and grand and actually benefit from our efforts, that would be the perfect way to re-establish the state of Azeroth for players and to lay the foundations for the game's next decade of stories. And you can be pretty darn sure that Blizzard does want there to be another decade of stories. With that said though, let's get down to the details. Let's talk about logistics. With the game director of World of Warcraft, I think essentially teasing a canonical time skip, you do have to wonder, will there be a revamp? I mean, it's a tantalizing question, but I have to be honest, I doubt we will get one like Cataclysm, given the extreme workload that Cataclysm ended up being. I instead believe that we will see targeted updates to the world that represent the state of the world, perhaps only for max level characters though. Now, this would be a great opportunity to reset the state of Azeroth for max level characters so that it reflects the story so far, and to allow Blizzard to set up, as I said, the next decade of stories, much like how Warcraft 3 was able to set up the next chapter, I guess the first chapter of World of Warcraft's life. So what could change there? I mean, the possibilities are rather infinite, but you could think of some pretty simple targeted changes. Have the Dark Irons retaken the rest of Blackrock Mountain. Then, with the many threats of Tanaris tamed, have the Waste Wonders established a city or a larger camp? Will we maybe see the built-up Gadget Zan as teased by the Hearthstone expansion? What about the work that we put into Westfall? Will max-level players see a prosperous Westfall? Underhull, Dire Maul, Feathermoon Stronghold, Stromgarde, So many places whose reconstruction and development could be, completed by the end of this time skip, by the time that we return. At its highest level of scope, this might even let Blizzard repair the Cataclysm. I mean, to have an Azeroth that, for max-level players who have played through all of that, to actually have the world no longer reflect a decade-old expansion storyline by default. A lot really could happen, but there's a lot of cracks that could also form. This peace that we've talked about is not going to be easy. Those left behind in Azeroth will still have to struggle for peace, because peace is not easy. We've got the resurgent Scarlet Brotherhood who will attempt to subvert developments in Lordaeron, as we covered in this video. Then, the Night Elves. Well, they may well have to contend with all of the problems that naturally come in rebuilding and consolidating. Desires like that naturally lead to land disputes, resource disputes, the usual non-space Satan Void Lord reasons that nations do bicker, even when peace would make the most sense. So yes, regions will maybe see cracks form, right, as sides try to push their agenda. And those may be small, but over 10 years they could grow. And this is, I think, where we'll see really introduced a host of new antagonistic organizations. Maybe the die-hard Night Elves who await the return of their vengeful leader Tyrande will form up, those who crave vengeance. Maybe there will be Forsaken who feel their nation is weak and has been blunted without Sylvanas' ruthless leadership, that the older Forsaken were strong. Groups like the Scarlet Brotherhood, maybe a revamped Twilight's Hammer, or others, right? Perhaps ones infiltrated by the Ethereals, as we teased in this video. Maybe tying into, just some of those mysteries, right? Much of this stuff can be straight up new lore. A whole cast of semi-relatable villains who just make sense from the state of the world to fill our dungeons in the same way that, say, the Defias Brotherhood were a very effective antagonist. So with the board reset and broad peace, we will see these new organizations appear, but we will see the peace broadly maintained, and I think it will feel pretty good for a while. And that is where the true conflict will begin. Our old adversaries have not sat idle. The Void Lords are not nearly done with us. The Titans also may be less friendly than we may think, but it will not be the Void who strikes first. It will not be the Titans. Two characters will return, ones who we absolutely will not want to see again. The Dark Portal once again roars to life. Sentries go dark, and word is sent from a rebuilt Netherguard keep. But this time it's different. The portal has exploded to life with a chorus of angelic music and shining light, and a great golden host comes through it. The first invasion of the light has begun, an ascendant Yrel at its head and a fanatical Zera at its heart. What better enemy to threaten our newfound liberty and progress? When I heard about the Light Mother from the Sermon of the High Exarch, alarm bells immediately went off, and that was ages ago. It was definitely an alt-universe Zera, or close enough to that to make me uncomfortable. And she was advocating at the time for a light crusade across the whole universe, the results of which, well, we can see in the aptly named scenario Tyranny of the Light that introduced the Mag'har. This would launch the first expansion of World of Warcraft ever with the Light as a villain, whilst violently launching the game into the next phase of its grand narrative, the Great Cosmic Conflict. This is all following on from Steve Denuser's drive to explore the Cosmos chart from Chronicle, but actually in-game. The invasion of the Light will be the first shots in a war so massive that it will preoccupy us for years and take us to crazy far-off lands. In the face of that, the only way for Blizzard to give us something worth fighting for is to upgrade Azeroth, and to do so via a timeskip, and to make the factions that we care about be, I'd say, solidified and re-established. So there you go, we will be gone, and all this socio-political drama will be fermenting, ready for us to return. We'll inevitably bring back something with us, though, right? While the Homesteaders are fighting Blight, and Orgrimmar maybe solidifies its influence over Kalimdor, and Thrall works out the tax code, we'll be rescuing, spoilers, from dungeons. We'll be discovering more about Elune, probably, about the source of the Lich King's powers. We'll be grappling with a damned Dreadlord and rebellious Kyrians. We are going on an adventure of cosmic consequence. It's just one that's siloed off in the Shadowlands. And the narratives that we bring back to Azeroth will add a whole other dimension to what you could otherwise see to be the mundane but tense politics of peace. And that really brings us back, though, to the idea that all roads lead to Azeroth, that this great game between light and void that we've talked about so much in this channel has not yet peaked, and that there are still legions of unbound demons as well. We don't even know what the Titans want. We don't know where they went. It seems pretty dark, right? And we're going to be bringing back from the Shadowlands knowledge, resources, and perhaps the will to defend ourselves against the infinite antagonism of the cosmos. And that's really where we're going to be leaving it for today. A pretty big video. I like how, we're able to go into the small details of just the nuts and bolts of how Azeroth could actually develop over 10 years, but then to bring in the light and the actual next big steps for the game, and how Blizzard could still give us players, hype, danger expansion, hype expansion, right, with big major moves happening, but still find a way that the story of World of Warcraft feels a little bit better paced, right? So that the people of the planet actually get to grow and get to develop. And I think that does mean that, there's just more stuff going on that us players can actually be attached to and can be interested in. So that is it for today's video. Let me know though, what do you want from Timeskip, right? What things do you want to be updated, right? Orgrimmar, Garrosh remade it to be so violent and warlike. Well, what's this new council going to do? Are they going to revamp Orgrimmar, make it a bit nicer? Who the hell knows? I just love to know, how would you love to see Azeroth progress? The Plague Lands. What do you think a more developed Plague Lands would be like? So do let me know down below. And just with that, thanks for watching this video. We loved putting it together. And I'll see you next time.